Hey guys, Brian Oakland here with Got Fishing Podcast, and today we have Abe Blair as a guest. How's it going, bud?
What's up, man? It's good to see you.
Really good to see you. Been waiting to do this podcast for a long time. For those of you who don't know who Abe is an adventure photography legend. Truly has been in the game for years and years and years. We'll have him tell a little bit about his story about how he got into this sport of photography and how he's really truly taken it to a next level. But really, Abe is known for adventure photography, really going out to some really cool, unique places. Whether it's sleeping in the middle of the winter in a tent up in the middle of nowhere, or being dropped off on the side of the road in Argentina to hike into a small town and capture some photos at Fitzroy. You really do embrace living the adventure life, and you've made a life or living, I guess, taking amazing photos along the way. So again, really glad to have you on the show, bud.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Look forward to chatting.
Yeah, yeah. So you and I actually, I knew about you prior to ever getting to meet you. I had seen some of your photography work that you had done up at some of the lodges up in Alaska. And I was working with a couple of the lodges that had contracted you to come up and do some work. So I was familiar with some of the amazing stuff that you'd done. But then through a friend of ours, Dennis, Wild Fish, Wild Places, we'll be talking more about him and that TV show that he's had going on for the last 13 years. But you were working with Dennis, and I was hosting a trip at Jurassic, and we all kind of ended up meeting in Argentina at Jurassic Lake. And that's how this whole thing started years ago.
Yeah, that was such a fun trip, and so many great memories and adventures since then. But that was a really cool trip just to link up with some other cool guys and hit it off so well.
Yeah. Getting to meet Matt Morning, you, Dennis. I mean, we really had a great crew there, and since then have got to really do some amazing adventures together. So it was meant a lot to me to get to meet a bunch of guys like you, and then have this relationship that we've had since.
Yeah,
But boy, what a trip that was! I mean, we had everything under the sun, from amazing weather to some of the most horrific windstorms they said they'd had there in years. Double rainbows, giant rainbows that we were catching. That was still probably one of the most amazing adventures I've ever been on.
yeah, that was. It's funny you mentioned the wind a few times, and yeah, I guess it was really really gnarly, windy and whatnot. But I think by that point I was already had embraced everything about that trip and that location so much. I don't really remember it being outrageously windy. I remember it was really, really hard to fish, but we were all in the same boat together. So we just kind of made it happen. And I think just that attitude that we all have, it's just, there was no like, we're not taking the day off. That was our group. So it was like, we're going
Yeah,
every day. And
yeah.
I don't really remember the wind. We caught fish. So I don't remember the wind sucking because we caught fish. So I guess it was windy, but not too
Yeah,
much that we couldn't catch fish.
it's funny how the weather doesn't really bother you when you're catching fish. In that case, we were definitely
Yeah,
catching fish. One of the
yeah.
funny stories that I remember about that trip, and we'll have Brandon on the show someday, but remember day one when we gathered up for lunch, and Brandon had shown up for lunch and with a broken arm, a
Oh my
concussion.
gosh,
He
that
had,
was crazy.
yeah, just what was that? Something to do with his eye. I mean, he really had torn himself up. Basically, he had fallen off a rock while he was casting because of the wind. And you could fall off one direction, and it'd be like a little 2-foot drop, and then you could fall off the other direction. It was about a 6-foot drop, and he not only fell off the 6-footer, but landed on his face.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad I wasn't there to see it in person, but the aftermath
No
was
kidding.
incredible. And then just to see him just kind of more or less walk it off, get driven to some I don't know where, middle of nowhere hospital to get a cast that looks like 3 decades old, and then go fishing the next day. I mean, what a badass! Like Brandon just crushed that whole trip.
Yeah, he really did. I'm telling you, 99 out of 100 would have gone home, would have executed their trip insurance and called it a day. But number one, we had to talk him into going to the village to get checked out. Luckily, we had a doctor with us that just was a client, but happened to be a doctor, and I think that his advice, helped encourage Brandon to, go seek some service, make sure that you're okay. Okay, but I was sitting in the lodge, and it was probably like about 11 at night. I was waiting for him. Remember, he comes through in this white T-shirt, and like you said, it has that cast on that looked like it came from the 70s. And I said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "I'm staying. I've come this far. I'm staying." And because it was his casting arm, his right arm, we had to cut the sleeve off of his jacket to fit that cast through that was the size of a log. And he proceeded to fish for the next 5 days with basically a light concussion, completely broken arm. And
I think there was duct tape involved in terms of attaching the rod to his casting hand.
We had duct tape involved, electrical tape involved.
Charged through it.
Oh, God, the cast was falling off by the end of the trip, I swear.
But I mean, we've been there. We've done that. Like, that's what you do at Jurassic. You don't miss a day because any of those days you fish, that could be a lifetime fish.
Absolutely.
I think that was sort of the extra fun that I had about that fishery was, as a lake, you can't see the fish. So every day you're casting and you're fishing with your friends and everybody's catching fish, but at any point it could be the one, that just changes your perspective on how big they can get.
Well, everybody goes there to catch a 20-pounder. They do exist in there. And you don't want to miss. You don't want to miss an opportunity to catch one of those, especially when you travel that far. And Brandon's also just cut from a different cloth. He's just a badass. So it was great having him on that trip as well. One of the things that I do remember, not only getting introduced to your amazing photography there, again, I had seen it before, but just watching you work. That was what was really impressive. I remember the day when we went on over to the remote lodge. I was having a heck of an awesome day, and you were working your ass off, taking photographs of me, Dennis, Jess for the TV show, and then decided to set the rod down for a second. Well, actually, two things happened that day. I remember one of them was out of nowhere, we kind of had a little bit of a storm come in, and then all of a sudden we had that double rainbow show up, and Jess was down on the shore fishing, and you captured just that epic shot of her with that rainbow. And
no wind.
Cool. Yeah, wind died on us, huh?
Yeah, because the rainbow was reflecting. You guys, that was, well, as you said, you saw me just literally sprinting up and down the beach. Like, there was so many photos to be had, and rainbows, you can kind of predict where they're going to be, but you don't know when they're going to end. So
yeah.
I saw that rainbow coming, and I set myself up as quick as possible to get a couple of really banger shots. And then, so and then I think I got a little reward afterwards. So that was spectacular.
You did. Not only did you capture a couple of banger shots, but then set the camera down and literally threw out a cast. And in my opinion, caught the fish of the week. I think there might have been one or two that were,
for sure.
Contenders with what you caught, but just as far as size and beauty, that thing was amazing.
Yeah, that fish was mint condition is the term I like to use for a fish like that. No dings, dents, scratches. The thing was just like it had never been touched before. And
well said.
Some of the other fish we caught were a little bit more beat up, and I think you're right. There's something about that fish is just pure perfection. And then, the fact that it was kind of a behind the scenes fish on this, you're not really supposed to catch the biggest fish of the week when you're behind the scenes of the fishing show.
Yeah, right.
So
you're supposed to be capturing someone else catching the biggest fish of the week.
Yeah.
We had to turn the camera on you.
I think that I laugh about that too, because, it's fishing. So all we're doing is talking about, well, what fly are you using? How far are you casting? And what's your retrieve like? And then classic, professional distraction is what I call it. For that particular fish, is, I sent out a big, long 80, 90-foot cast. And then because that rainbow was still going on, I tucked the rod up underneath my arm, and I was fishing around in my jacket from my iPhone so I could take more photos. And then I just felt some weight on that rod. There was no retrieve. There was no strip. Oh, it's a figure 8 retrieve or this. No, I cast, and I was just letting it sink, and it just happened.
Boom.
And that, again, is just what I was talking about before with Jurassic. It's just at any moment that could be the fish.
And at that moment it was, and ended up being the fish for the week. That was incredible.
Yeah. No, that I really like that other side of the lake over there. That whole Outpost Lodge experience was cool.
I did too. I'm actually hoping the next time we go over there to stay there for a couple nights instead of just the one, and really fish that side of the lake.
Throw that out there and see if we could get a 2-night stay just to explore more of that water. We just kind of fished that one main bay, but I know there was a lot of other water. And I definitely spent a lot of time, and I think it'd be a great place over the years
for the photo clinic. But we'll talk about that here a little bit more. Tell people about that. One of the I knew you were a badass. I knew you were an adventurer, but I had literally just met you, hung out with you for about 7-8 days, and then we were heading back to El Calafate, which is a small little hippie town there in Argentina, where you fly into in order to get to Jurassic Lake. But it's also how you get over to a pretty famous place, a little climbing village called, I think, how do you pronounce that? El Chalten?
Yeah,
or Fitzroy. And yeah. We dropped you off on the side of the road. You hiked into there, caught a ride, and then basically stayed in that village and up on the mountain for about a week, capturing some really amazing photos. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was, I think, 10-day trip, and I was in my tent, I think 8 of those days. I dreamed of going to that area and region for many, many years. So I remember I got into town late. I think the bus broke down or something. We were delayed, and I got there, pretty much threw my stuff in the hostel room, went to the bar, got a burger and a beer, and was originally just going to go back to the hostel and sleep. And then noticed the weather was clear. It was nice. And as you know how I operate, I saw an opportunity. So I grabbed all my gear, packed it into an overnight bag, and took off in the dark out of the town I'd never been to, up a trail I'd never heard of or seen, and took off for the Fitzroy. And about 4 miles later, I popped out of the woods, and the Milky Way was out, and the mountain was glowing, and yeah, I just pretty much lived on the trail for the better part of a week up there. Just literally just chasing the light. And yeah,
literally caught some next level stuff. That was I've seen. Well, actually, you ended up winning an award or two for one of those photos of the Fitzroy, didn't you?
Yeah, my Condor's nest image. Picked up a few awards now.
Yeah,
kind of lost track, but yeah, it's podiumed a couple of the competitions.
Now, one of the nights we were up there, again, like you just said, up a trail you've never been, on the side of the mountain, and you're by yourself. And this village that you're staying in, this climbing village, it's not climbing season. So it's not like there's hardly anybody there. It's super remote. You hike up on this mountain by yourself, and then in the middle of the night, like a storm or something rolls in on you, and you're forced off the mountain.
Yeah, a couple days later, and I'd heard the horror stories from my professional climbing friends about the weather in that area. So I woke up, my tent was leaking, it was snowing hard, and it was bad. So I just packed everything up, stuffed it into that backpack, and smashed back down to town. That took a couple of hours. I remember just my feet were soaking wet. My actual hiking boots literally fell apart later that day. I threw them away on the end of that trip. because they just got so beat
They've
up
had
with
it.
the amount of
Huh.
miles I put on and the bad weather. See, I had definitely pulled the plug. That was one of the gnarlier, like, kind of evacs I think I had ever done. But I was really close to a river, deep in the mountains, and the way that weather was coming in, I didn't know. The weather service is so limited down there. I didn't know how long that storm was
Yeah.
going to be, so I didn't want to stick around for a few days. And luckily, it cleared the following day. I think I probably got to my cabin maybe at like 3 a.m. and I was probably back on the trail by dinner the next day because it had snowed. So I wanted to get back up and photograph the
Yeah.
fall color with the snow.
Well, I think that's where that money shot came from, because there was a little bit of snow in the background there. Looked amazing.
Oh, I was just going to say that condor's nest image, that's where I was originally trying to get to the night of that storm. Is it's not an easy location to get to where I photographed that. And there's some pretty gnarly free climbing and just general high exposure scrambling.
Was there any climbers in that area at that time, or is it just you stay off of there because of the weather conditions?
No, just there's some other landscape photographers similar to myself. Little groups of one, two guys here, one guy there. But yeah, where I was out and about, it's pretty isolated. There's more of there's some campgrounds down in the lower elevations that get a lot more of the tourism, I would say.
Got it. So the Abe Blair that I meet up at Jurassic, obviously you're a professional at this time. You really know what you're doing. You're capturing cool stuff like that on Fitzroy. You truly got this adventuring down. Well, let's back up to kind of how it all began. I mean, a lot of people would love this idea of being a professional photographer, like a true professional photographer like you are, like making money, raising a family, and paying for that stuff off the living that you're making. How did this whole thing start?
Boy, I guess it all started when I was about 14, freshman in high school, when I got a camera and a snowboard at the same time, essentially, which then took me right into photography class in high school. And from that point on, that's what I wanted to do. I sat in school and, did what I needed to do to get through school. Had some interest in math and science, but I wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be a snowboarding photographer. So I was reading the magazines behind my science books in class, but I was not looking at the athletes. I was studying the names of the photographers, how they were doing what they were doing. A few of them lived within reach of where I lived, so I got to meet them a few times and ask them about what they do. So I fully just immersed myself in that industry, as I needed to. So coming out of high school, I was pretty fired up with snowboarding and photography. And then I shattered my skull, right after high school, probably 2 or 3 days after walking the stage. And so that really put a kink in plans in general. I was in the hospital for the better part of 6 months, had to relearn how to walk, talk, basically function as an independent human. And you know me, I'm a pretty stubborn and persistent guy. So the doctor said, well, you're going to have a comfortable life on the couch is the best prognosis we can give you. You should have died. You should have been paralyzed. And I wasn't going to accept that kind of a prognosis. So I just kept pushing and pushing and doing all the things I was told I couldn't and shouldn't do. Because that's just what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would do all of that over again. I learned so much about myself and how the world works. And through that process, that's why I do what I do the way I do it. I live every day as as full as I can just because of that close call. So I think that helps kind of light that motivation, that fire under me to live this life well and to succeed. Everybody
I
would
love
love
that.
to be a traveling adventure photographer and have a big gallery and fly around the world and everything. And I love every minute of it, but it's not easy. None of this was what I would say planned. It was just more, again, that stubborn persistence of just, this is what I'm going to do. So once I became a professional snowboarding photographer, I mean, that was the bulk of my 20s, surrounded with other guys similar aged. And so there was nobody senior to teach us. There was a guy, senior was, the guy who had one more year of snowmobiling experience than us,
Right.
kind of thing. So
Right.
when you talk about my solo hiking and everything, we were figuring it out back in the day on our snowmobiles, deep in the mountains, doing all kinds of crazy stuff that probably wasn't the smartest and the safest. And there was a tremendous amount of luck on our sides to come out of those mountains every day alive and well. But after a 10-plus year career with that environment is my comfort zone. It is the happy place for me where I guess I don't concern myself. I'm aware of the risks, but they don't slow me down, I would say.
Well, it's amazing that those who have persevered through adversity, and obviously, this is something that was huge. I mean, for the prognosis to be that you're going to be basically camped out on a couch, and instead you're camped out on the side of cliffs, side of mountains. That's pretty incredible. But obviously, to persevere through something like that, you're a different kind of person. It certainly charges your battery up to appreciate life in a different manner. And I can see the way that you approach life, what an impact it had on you. And I'm always blown away that those that are really living life, and everybody kind of thinks they're just crushing it. There's always a story behind the story of something that they crushed that you just don't know about, whether it was the way they were brought up or some kind of something that they had to deal with that they didn't ask for that came into their life. And you either decide that this is going to make me who I am, or it's going to be an excuse for why I am the person that I am in not such a great manner. A lot of people love excuses, especially on a sunny day, let alone a rainy day when you would legitimately have an excuse for quitting and you choose not to. And look what can happen. Here you are traveling around the world, have an amazing family, seeing amazing things, just because you said, no, I'm not quitting. So for the listeners, whatever you're going through, I doubt that it was anything like that. And even if it was, then there you go. Do not quit because the glory's on the other side of it. We've all heard it, but I love hearing from people who truly have, had their skull crushed. And was told this is kind of the end of it, bud. Your best days are done, and yet you've had obviously some really, really epic days since then. And in your when you were saying kind of like you were cutting your teeth out there on the field. I mean, this was back in the day where you even had a couple gigs with Red Bull. And that's back when Red Bull was kind of cutting their teeth on this adventure, kind of bringing the energy drink to us in an adventurous way and capturing really cool stuff. And as we're watching these guys tear down these mountains, you're actually tucked up on one of those cliffs, dropped off by a helicopter, filming this stuff, huh?
Yeah. When I was teaching my wife to snowboard, or I go with folks who don't snowboard on the ex-professional level, I was so immersed, I forget. People always ask if I'm a good snowboarder. It's like, well, no, because I was hanging out with the best of the best. So, yeah, I would
Watching them snowboard.
If I was the second person down a mountain where, Jeremy Jones takes the first run and I'm photographing from the top, well, I'm just following his run. So it's no big deal in my head for not paying attention that, that was like the second descent ever down a mountain. Or again, I was just doing my job, which, as you know, I love to do. And so I just get it done, whatever it takes. So I'm not usually, I think the job requires so much focus and the immersion, and you're being aware of all of your surroundings. You're not there in the moment until it's over, kind of a thing. You're just busy doing and trying not to die and get your job done. And then you get to reflect on it back at the lodge at the end of the day or in the tent, and it's like, wow, that was incredible.
Right.
I've had, gosh, probably 1,000 of those nights or days like that, where you just sit down like, wow, that was the greatest day of my life.
Wow, the greatest day of my life, over and over and over. Like Groundhog Day on steroids.
Yeah. It's that.
What? Finished it. Is that what?
Oh, no. It was a good, fun lifestyle, yeah. But I still continue to do it today as best I can, It's a little slower, wife and kids and owning a big gallery business and everything. But so I don't get out as much, but every day is still special. And I love it, Just got back from 7 weeks living with grizzly bears in Alaska. So my quota is pretty full right now.
Yeah. Pretty incredible. I was actually going to transition there from kind of the younger days, you living on the side of a mountain, on the side of cliffs, doing the Red Bull thing, kind of flash forward to today. And now you're truly a professional photographer. I mean, you have a gallery. I mean, you got a family. You're traveling around the world doing this stuff for money. How hard is it in today's day and age of the iPhones and the GoPros? How difficult is it to be a professional photographer in this day and age when everybody thinks that they're a professional?
I think about that a lot. I mean, I can't imagine, honestly, to start at square one now. I couldn't imagine. When I started, I was told it was a crowded space before digital cameras, right before they came out and were invented. And I was told it was going to be a difficult journey in a very crowded space. And, and that was like a empty land of no competition compared to now. I think the key to my success as a photographer currently is that reputation and the tenure that I've had. So if somebody were starting out, I'm not quite sure how one would go about, achieving the kind of the level that I'm at without just grinding out the process for at least a decade. And I think most of my friends and associates in this line of work, we all have a similar story, which is we just don't quit. We were capable of pivoting and fixing stuff, adjusting quickly. And so, I mean, photography is the number one hobby in the world, so it is definitely saturated. But there's always a need. There's always niches. Like some of the stuff we'll talk about on this upcoming hosted trip down to Jurassic is the way I look at photography is it's not about the equipment. It's the light. I like to teach people more about seeing the light, thinking ahead about the light, not the camera or the lens. That's kind of a secondary. There are ways to utilize the camera and the lens better, but it's more about seeing the light ahead of time and putting yourself in the right place so that you're ready.
Hey, just wanted to take a second here and do a shout out to our newest sponsor, High and Dry Floatants. Can't say enough about this company, located out of Missoula, Montana. Everybody uses floatants in fly fishing, and most of the floatants that we're using truly are not good for the environment. On the other side, most of the floatants that we use out there that are environmentally sensitive don't work at all. So we end up using the stuff that's not necessarily good for the rivers and the lakes that we're fishing in. High and Dry is not only environmentally sensitive, but it works. It really works. Works better than the non-environmentally sensitive products that are out there. So if you haven't tried High and Dry, make sure that you do. It's in a lot of fly shops. If you can't seem to find it in your local fly shop, give us a call, and we'll make sure that we get you some. But High and Dry, check it out. Your average, photographer like me who's not really into it, wants to capture a good photo, what's a tip or two that, we're doing wrong out there that we could be fixing?
Well, so I'll answer that question, but first I'm going to kind of summarize a really nice analogy, I think, to that the fishermen can understand and photographers can understand from the fishing is, I mean, how many times, I know you have, when you're out dry fly fishing and you've got a rising trout on a river and you're trying to get just the right cast and you just can't get things to line up. And how many times, I don't know if you've maybe moved just a few inches to make a slight adjustment to your angle of presentation, and that first cast with that adjustment, boom, fish smashes that fly, and you succeed. Photography and fishing is exactly the same way, where, you've got your camera, this or that, you snap the photo and you look and you're like, it's just not as cool as I remember. That's what I'm going to be there for, is to show you, like, hey, let's drop this camera down 6 more inches. Bring yourself to eye level to the angler. So generally when we're holding a fish, again, we've talked about this because you've been in front of my lens before. Don't be standing up and then leaning way over to hold the fish. Just take a knee, put both knees down on the rocks, hold the fish out of the water just a little bit, but then the photographer needs to come down to that same level. And so just moving that camera just a few inches or a foot left or right, just as you would an angler, to make that cast better. I see the similarity is the same. And so
that's a great tip.
Tips that I would give is bring the camera to the level of the angler, their eyes. And as you know as well, take those sunglasses off. It's amazing how much better a fishing photo can be when you take those sunglasses off, and you can either see the angler is either going to be looking straight into the camera with that elated look that you're going to get in the eyes, or better yet, their eyes are actually looking at the fish in their hand, which then directs more attention to the star of the show, which is the fish, not the angler.
Right.
So no sunglasses. That's like a staple in the professional fishing world, is take those things off when you're going to get a grip and grin. Yeah.
No, that's a great one, because a lot of guys do 2 things. One, they forget to take them off. I'll give them that. But then 2, a lot of people think it just makes it look, it's a cooler picture to have my Costas on or to have my Smiths on during the photo. But being able to see their eyes and the emotion really makes for a better picture.
It really does, yeah. And so with so many parts of professional photography, it is just those subtleties. It's not that you ask about becoming a professional. It's learning those subtleties over tenure and time. It's not about getting the biggest, best camera. It's just about using what you have and pairing it with the light. And so that's how I teach my landscape photography classes in the fishing as well. Is I'm a firm believer of the mantra of it's the Indian and not the arrow. In terms of equipment. And so just using what you have, everything we have these days, from fishing rods to equipment, is such a level up compared to gear a few decades ago that we really don't, I don't think there's very much room for excuses.
Yeah, the advancement it's who knows where it's going to go from here. One of the tips that you gave me back, and I don't remember if it was a Jurassic or one of our other adventures, but I've used it a ton, and I've actually shared it a bunch, and that is a lot of guys wait, or gals, when they wait for the grip and grin. But I liked your suggestion on starting to take a couple photos of while they're getting it out of the net. Some of that kind of, that's where you really can capture a photo that's got a lot of emotion behind it, because they're not smiling, they're not really presenting it yet. They're pulling it out of the net, or they're working on getting the hook out or something like that, and capturing a few of those prior to the grip and grin can really turn out to be a great photo.
Yeah, sometimes there are outstanding images in that sequence. And then from a professional level, the reason I started shooting at that point in time is if that fish escapes the grip and grin photo, at least there's proof of life. There was proof that, hey, look at this, how much girth that net was, weighed down. And because we've all had, that fish, you just pull it out of the net and it comes up to the camera and then it just explodes out of your hand. The best we have is that hovering fish picture. And
yeah.
So and with the day of digital cameras right now, just as soon as that thing's in the net, start taking pictures, and you'll get something.
I always laugh. I always give my buddies shit about it. Digital. My photographs on my phone, taking them are free, so you don't have to worry about it. They hand you your camera back after you've caught a big fish, and they've taken 2 photos. I'm like, load that thing up. Just start clicking.
Yeah. No, and I want to be deleting 30 shots per fish.
Exactly.
At the lodge that night. Yeah, just shoot away.
Because honestly, oftentimes when we were going through the deleting, a lot of times you're deleting the photo that you thought was going to be the shot, like the grip and grin, but really it was the photo right before the grip and grin that kind of captured the essence of the moment and ended up being the winner. Real quick, totally. Tell us a little bit about you. Not only travel around the world doing this, but also, as you mentioned, you have a gallery, Alpenglow, over in Tahoe. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yep. I co-own with 2 amazing partners, the largest art gallery in the Tahoe region. It's about 2,400 square foot, 2-story building that was actually built from the ground up in 2006 by some other photographers to be their art gallery. So it's an amazing space, right in the heart of downtown, historic Truckee. And it's a lot of fun. I work there about 4 days a week. On the sales floor, and then the rest of the time I'm out capturing new images and managing the family. And we're really lucky to live in such a beautiful area and have the gallery 10 minutes from my house and 20 minutes away from places I can photograph and put the work right on the gallery walls. So we're just really lucky to have it all super close. I can go and take kids to school, swing up to the river, photograph some fall color, and then pop into the gallery and sell that photo later that afternoon. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, you know what? It's amazing. It's amazing. People would kill to have that life. Drop your kids off, capture a couple photos, head in. That's living the work life.
Yeah. Those are, it's just that phrase, choose something you love to do and you'll never work a day in your life. That is, I feel I am the epitome of that quote. Cause everything I do, it is work. I love it so much that it's just hard work, but it's fun.
I find the same thing. I think a lot of people, get confused, what an adventure consultant was just play all day, but it is work. It's just a different kind of work and it's a really enjoyable work, but you're not going to have success in anything if you don't work hard at it and put your best foot forward on a consistent and constant basis. And as a matter of fact, I would argue that, living this lifestyle and, making money is a little bit more difficult because there's a lot of distractions, a lot of opportunity, to not be getting the job done while you're out there playing. We're fortunate enough to be, pretty motivated and disciplined in our areas. But living this life is amazing, but it's not a walk in the park.
No,
better digging a ditch.
Exactly. Yeah, it's work and I love it, but it's not like sipping Mai Tais on the beach every single day.
No, although that does happen. Real quick, one of the other things we like to talk a lot about, especially when we have the opportunity, is getting kids out fishing. I think that is just huge in this day and age with everything that we've got going on, especially with kids kind of struggling out there with direction, purpose, suicide rates going through the roof, video games, kind of all the distractions that we have. So we talk a lot about how we can be helping pay it forward, get kids out. And you're one of those dads. We always talk about, on the show that, when I would take Oki to the river, we'd look up and down the river, and there's a lot of guys fishing, but there's not a lot of kids on the river. A lot of guys and dads are using this opportunity to take a break, and get away from the family. But you're not that guy. You're that guy that takes your family with you everywhere you go, and you've had your kids involved in your adventures from day one. Not only tell me a little bit about that, but also try to tie it into that story with you putting that fishery together, not too far from your home, and getting your kids involved, and then this summer stroking that giant rainbow out of it, or your boy. Tell me a little bit about that and what it means to you to have your kids involved in the stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I fishing is life. I've been doing it since I was 6, and so I really definitely wanted my kids to have that same passion. So I and through the tenure that I've had fishing over 30 something years, 40 now almost, I've been able to kind of shortcut some of their learning process and get them into some really unique fisheries. Took them out to Pyramid Lake with our friend Dennis. So I mean, I literally got my 4-year-old daughter, and I'm holding on to her by the seat of her pants because she's reeling in like a 12-pound Wahonton cutthroat trout. I mean, so they got spoiled early on. I think that fueled their interest. And then, of course, they just kind of want to do whatever daddy does. I'm still a cool guy for a few more years. They're about 9 and 10 now. So
it wears off.
I just, want to get them passionate with it. I just took them to that fishery I was telling you about that I've been developing up in the high alpine, and it was really fun. It was for my son's 10th birthday, so I gave him his first pocket knife, which was exciting. But I also told him ahead of time that I didn't learn to fly fish till I was 10, and so that weekend I let him cast my fly rod for the first time, and he really was excited. Did an amazing job casting consistently 25 feet first time. So they're excited, and I just love to teach in general, but teaching something I'm so passionate about makes it that much funner.
No question. Yeah, that's awesome. Such a great kid. So lucky enough for those that are listening, we do have an opportunity to go on a fishing adventure with you to a really incredible place that we've already been talking about, Jurassic Lake in Argentina. So we, Got Fishing is known for our hosted trips. We not only book people around the world to go with whether themselves or whether a buddy, but what we're really known for is our hosted trips, taking a group of like-minded people. You and I have been to La Pescadora. We've been to the Ascension Bay. We've been on the main salmon. We've been to Pyramid Lake, and the camaraderie that comes with fishing is awesome. And having a bunch of people around that are kind of sharing the same ideals is a ton of fun. So our hosted trips have been huge, and we decided that instead of just doing a hosted trip where we're bringing like-minded anglers together, let's do one for those that not only love the adventure, but also really, truly do want to take their photography game to the next level. And so we've got a hosted trip that we're going to open up to 6 guests. We've already got a couple booked by now, so it's probably down to about 4. But an opportunity for a handful of people to go to Argentina with you on a fishing adventure and a photo clinic. I think we're going to do it, we are doing it March 18th to the 25th of 2023. Those that are listening, jump on our website, gotfishing.com. We've got some information on it. But Abe, give us a snapshot of, I'm a photographer. I enjoy fishing. I want to go on this adventure. What am I going to learn coming off of this? Obviously, we're going to do a ton of cool fishing, but what's a day going to look like with you out there on Strobel Lake or Jurassic Lake?
Well, I think the biggest change or difference that you're going to see from like a just fishing trip is, one, we're going to stress that the cameras are accessible and with us at all times in the day. And just try to I'll be making a big point when I see something worth photographing to, hey, like, grab your camera, stop, let's cruise over, take a picture of our friend who's just down on the point look at that backlight and the waves, and let's snap a couple of those photos. So just as the lodge is providing the guides to put us into the best water for the day, I'm going to be kind of like the guide, but for photography, in the sense of pointing out what's worth photographing, what I see, what inspires me to make a good image. So we'll be doing the normal day program, but taking little timeouts to one, capture photos and then improve on that. And that you're going to see a learning curve acceleration over the course of the week, because the first day we'll go out, we'll shoot. And then while we're having our appetizers, we'll be downloading our photos into the laptops and do some basic processing. And I can show some really effective techniques in really sprucing up those raw file images to that professional grade. And then we're just going to keep doing that every day and just advancing the techniques and the processes. You know, I'm going to be, people have the opportunity to sort of tap into my 15 to 20 years of professional photography experience with a multitude of questions on how do I do this? What's this? How do I make this look or that look? At this point, I feel as if I can kind of teach just about anything. So I just need the requests, and then we'll dive into it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a special trip. The lodge is really excited about having the group out there. We've had a lot of people asking about an opportunity to go out with you. And so, yeah, here it is. And like you were saying, you know, it's going to advance your techniques, because you're not just doing this for a day or two. A lot of photo clinics, or a lot of any clinics, casting clinics, photo clinics, you name it, they're for a day or two. And they're typically, like your casting is going to be at a park. You know, it's not live action. It's not as the events are unfolding, or as the sky is changing, or as that rainbow is starting to form. You guys are going to be there to capture that, and really then take from the photograph to the editing to improving, and then have the opportunity to go out the very next day and work on those subtle techniques that you've taught them in improving. And by the end of 6 or 7 days of that, fishing and capturing these photos, not only of the fish, but also the ever-changing conditions and the wildlife that presents itself, you're going to come back. You're going to come out pretty seasoned.
Yeah, like, I don't know if you remember, we had a couple of really impressive sunrises at the lodge that most everybody slept through, but not me. I was up every one of those mornings, you know, nailing photos just outside of the lodge, because being right on that smaller lake and that nice bluff, there was lots of good photo options to be had right then and there. And so, you know, we're up there. I'm going to be knocking on doors at, 5 o'clock in the morning saying, let's go. It's going to be really pretty out. And, just seeing that weather preemptively, like I was talking about before, just my years in the mountains, I can read the weather reports, but also just physically observe the weather and kind of know when and where it's going to be good.
Yep. One of the other things too, I remember some of the photos, and this is what you're fairly notorious for these days, and that's that night photography. And I remember not just you getting up sometimes at 4 or 5 in the morning to catch sunrises, but you were up at 2 in the morning, 1 in the morning, capturing some really amazing photographs of the Milky Way and just the whole solar system. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, and the first half of this hosted trip, it's a really good Milky Way conditions. Will be like 20 and 30, 40% moon the first half of the trip. So they'll definitely, if the skies are clear, we'll definitely have the opportunity to see some of the southern Milky Way and the Magellan clouds. It's super cool.
Awesome. Well, that's an opportunity in of itself to be able to do some night photography with you. And in addition, for those that enjoy catching fish, which obviously you're not going on this trip unless you do, there's that whole opportunity to be catching double-digit rainbows while learning, some really next-level photography stuff from a legend in the sport, really in a legendary fishing place, top 10, bucket list area. I mean, it really is going to be a special trip. So for those that have been looking
And
for
so far, I think,
a reason to get down, go ahead.
I was going to say, so far too, I think with people that have booked and or are probably going to be booking, it's looking to be a pretty rad group. I mean, we got, if Cody jumps in, because he guides in Alaska, so he's super handy with the fishing rod. And then my buddy Alessandro from Italy, he's still an active professional ski photographer, and then does a lot of professional fly fishing work. So it's shaping up to be a pretty eclectic group of talented fly fishermen and photographers just looking to kind of hone their game a little bit more. So I think it's going to be a really fun
it's going to be a really an awesome trip. And maybe I need to go on it. I keep talking about wanting to improve my game in the photography arena. So honestly, it is something that I've considered. If there is a spot, I might jump on it myself. But for those that are interested, like I said, jump on our website, gotfishing.com. We do have that trip up with all the information, and then at the bottom of that, you can request to get some additional information from us. And Abe, tell people a little bit about how they can learn a little bit more about you, like your Instagram, some of the ways they can not only learn about Abe, but also check out some of the artwork that you have. I know you have some of that stuff for sale online. So walk us through what's the best way to learn about Abe and check out your stuff.
Fortunately, my name is pretty unique, so I'm easily searchable in any of your browsers. You can just type in Abe Blair, and a couple pages show up in Google. My website, abeblair.com. My Instagram and Facebook is also just Abe Blair. And then the gallery is alpenglowgallery.com. But generally, just typing my name into Google, you'll be able to link to stories and snowboarding magazines and other articles and links from projects I've worked on over the years. And then my Instagram is definitely the most up to date in terms of where I am, what I'm doing. That's what I'm most active on. Something like 22,000 followers or so, and counting. So.
Well, it was fun because just like the story you were just telling yesterday, dropping the kids off at school and then just being minutes away. Yesterday, you dropped the kids off and you were up in that Aspen Grove taking some really amazing photos.
Yeah. Yesterday was really awesome. I went the day before with no plan, kind of messed around and shot a few photos, and then found inspiration in a area I didn't spend enough time in, so I went back with a mission, and I'm excited to release the next couple of images from yesterday. Just always trying to kind of push my style and technique differently. So this is another one of those years where shooting a different style of imagery.
Yeah. Well, everything you shoot, no BS. It really is amazing. You definitely have skills. I think a lot of the stuff that people are going to learn is not only just on the photography side, on how to take the photo, the different angles, but the editing. You're just a savage on the editing aspect of it, and that can obviously, make the difference between a great photo and an okay photo. So that'll be great. And for those, the hosted trip, we take care of everything for you. That's another nice thing about it. We really help you with making sure that all of the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. You're going to have your gear list on the fishing side of it. Abe's going to be providing a gear list for the photography side of it. So really, it's one of those trips where you just get to go, enjoy yourself. We'll take care of all of the hard stuff, making the trip as easy and as streamlined as possible so that you can just go and enjoy and learn and catch big fish and take amazing photos of it. So, don't miss out on that opportunity to go on a great adventure with Abe and a bunch of other really cool people that'll be on that trip as well. So, Abe, we're trying to keep this thing under an hour. We're almost there. Obviously, we're going to have you on the show numerous times in the future with all of the different adventures that you and I are doing. But I just wanted to say thanks. Thanks big time for coming on the show. And, just thanks for being an awesome, awesome example in the outdoor industry of, living the adventure, treating people right, getting kids involved. You really are a legend, and I'm honored to have you part of the Got Fishing team and to be friends.
I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to work with you on all the different projects and the Got Fishing team. And we have always had such a good time.